Welcome to Integrate Yourself podcast. We are your hosts, Allison Pillow and Maya Gottlieb. You can find Allison at pureenergypdx.com, and you can find me at mayagottlieb.com. Today we are here with John McMullin, the grand master of weirdness. John is a regular human being with all the typical flaws and imperfections. However, he also has a powerful superhuman who carries a powerful torch of self-discovery, reverence for life, and a wisdom of inner truth. John is the creator of Journeys of Wisdom, a place where human seekers can discover their own greatness to fully experience life, their own greatness, and to know that they are loved. Thousands from around the world have connected with John, either one-on-one, group calls, or attended intensive 4-day workshops. John also teaches coaches how to empower themselves and pass the torch of empowerment to others through his program, Holistic Coaching Certification. Welcome, John, to our podcast. We are so grateful for you to be here today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you became a holistic coach and what it means to you?
Well, first, thank you. That sounds like a pretty good description.
I like that, huh?
Yeah, I do. I think the idea of learning to coach oneself is really important holistically. And by that, I'm suggesting that we are a multifaceted person. We're an emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, intuitive human. And when parts of our ego don't trust self based on some of the trauma all of us have had growing up, we sit with reactive behavior, of which I created at one point, owning, totally 12 businesses. It took me a long time to figure out I was running businesses to prove my worth. So once I caught on to the deception of self, I started coaching self, starting with psychology classes and the like. Ultimately developed into an effort with a program called Touch for Health, in which I sit on the board, teaching applied kinesiology, which is a process of learning to trust intuition. And so learning intuition for me is learning how to teach our ego not to interfere with the clarity of consciousness from another source. Once I learned how to do that and felt what mattered to me, I was able to learn to teach those who were willing to listen with their heart how to do that also. So does that answer your question?
I think our listeners might like that. And you said something about what it means to you. And that's one of the main things that you come first with, and besides the 3 prayers. And as I remember, the prayers were, as I blank out.
Well, I'll help you. They are, the first is to allow ourselves the humbleness of first, may the higher purpose be served.
That's right.
Which is to suggest that it's a purpose is being served beyond the control dramas of our own ego. The second is, surprise me, God, if in fact you call higher source or God or whatever name we choose to give it. If we invite source, God, to surprise us, then we are not blindsided by surprises, owning shame and fear that we attach to being surprised. The third prayer is return me to innocence, which for me means to realize we're adult children and we lose our curiosity, the passion of curiosity and courage in a defended ego to hide from life. My invitation is to become childlike, not childish, so that we can begin to discover what it is we don't know.
Mm. Those are so powerful. They're amazing. And one of the things that we were working together on is talking about what does the aging aspect do to the ego versus the soul, the resistance of that and the reverence of that.
Wow, great question. I would guess because all mortals carry an ego, which is how parts of our mind were conditioned early in our life to perceive the illusion of time. So we speak in terms of consciousness as what has been, is, or will be. The soul, spirit therein, is timeless. And it is the part of us that reminds us that we are eternal, there is no time, and that we've been given a body on loan for a while to experience this literal realm. In this realm of duality, to trick ourselves so we can obtain a consciousness higher than our own deception.
Mm. Can you put them in layman terms? That's a lot for maybe some of the listeners, in terms of relativity to maybe the body itself and decay of how it feels to be in an older body and mind is still young and vibrant.
There is a part of me that believes I'm a 77-year-old fart. There is another part of me that looks in the mirror and wonders who that old guy is looking back at me. So, to answer your question, it is amazing as we permit ourselves to explore passionately the message of life, how we become younger and younger in terms of passion, of curiosity. I believe the aging of our body is a belief. That principally aging is a process of punishing ourselves internally. And we beat up on glands and organs, that we actually disrupt the vibration of parts of our body that repair itself. For example, looking at the frayed ends of the DNA and how they promote aging through what we do with the cells in our body through stress. History has recorded a number of folks who've lived many years beyond expectation. Maybe they connected with a source of consciousness that helped them to realize they're the vessel of expression, not responsible as the source of expression. So I find people who are youthful, people who allow life to be, laugh with life, as we did a little while ago, tend to stay youthful. Those who don't accelerate the, quote, aging process in the way we damage our body through self-destruction of belief and attachment to values we grew up with.
That's a lot. Allison?
Oh, I'm just taking it all in.
It does. What did you called it years ago? It's penetrating oil, John? Because a lot of it just goes right in and doesn't go anywhere but right back out.
Yeah,
Interesting.
The vessel is what he speaks of.
It is, actually. I would submit that the ego knows how to filter out a lot. So we listen and hear. Often what we hear is a small percentage of what we're listening for, realizing we don't hear what people tell us. We hear our agenda of what people tell us. So like penetrating oil, everybody listening to our discussion will get the pieces and parts appropriate in the moment.
And does that kind of, from my opinion, kind of makes me think of why you would like something and why you would dislike something. Your expectation is enrolled in what that person is about to say versus you're looking for what they're going to say is going to agree with you or disagree with you. And if you find that you're not getting what you thought was going to come out, some part of you is just like off to the races or, frustrated or, quietly in, wherever we go whenever we don't want to pay attention, right? Or we get disheartened by the fact that that expectation didn't get met. Is that kind of true for you?
Yeah, that's a pretty broad question. Thank you. To answer the question, I would offer the ability to perceive one through the human ego that attaches the ego values based on what we grew up with. Mm-hmm. So what we make right or wrong, agree or disagree with, essentially is a loyalty we grew up with from our experience of family. From the spirit's point of view, we'll call it soul for the moment, it perceives the perfection of every necessity of life experience. We create our own realities of what we experience. So the purpose of life is to reflect back to us the challenges yet unresolved. It has many other purposes, but the duality of how the ego perceives this literal realm versus the agreement of the sacredness of our spirit appear very differently.
Okay, so John, I had a question for you about values. You mentioned we take on the values of our parents, but we continue with those values on into adulthood. We continue to live by those values, and maybe unconsciously, it drives us. So, from a subconscious level, and so. How do we begin to, I guess, bring awareness around that, and then also start to shift those values into creating values that are really coming from a place of what's serving us instead of what was serving our needs when we were smaller and living with our parents?
It's a magic question. And it's a question that many philosophers, therapists, counselors have struggled with eons of time, including Freud and certainly Carl Jung. Carl Jung called it individuating, the ability to know self beyond the projections or judgments of what we grew up with. And so the paradox is there is a part of us that wants to belong. And the belonging is to the family we created in our mind, our mother, father, siblings, and the like. And so we attach to their values. And then we belong in a family out of compliance or defiance. So on we go as adult children, carrying forth the same values we grew up with and utilize those values in a future relationship with a significant other or spouse. What happens is it creates a lot of conflict and chaos because it means that we're trying to live our life with the values that we think are appropriate, making people we're emotionally invested with right or wrong, good or bad. When Carl Jung attempted this individuating process where he attempted to separate himself from the values of his family based on my experience, what happened was he lost himself. He actually cracked up because it created for the human ego a loss of connection.
Oh, right.
And he fell into the abyss. So It's an important question you ask because it's a process, something we do one step at a time, learning how to connect with our own values rather than remain attached to other people and their values. So the human ego has been programmed to get its emotional needs met through attachment, that is, approval or disapproval of other people. We literally teach them to approve or disapprove of us in the way we were as children, to have a sense of belonging. The separation process happens as we begin to understand the consequences of attachment. There's a word for this, it's called wisdom. When wisdom happens, we understand the need of getting affirmed or scolded, shamed, or threatened by another person, how to learn to become a witness of that rather than a participant of it. This is what separates reaction from responding. So older people allow other folks to have opinions that don't necessarily fit in their value system, realizing they're expressing the values they grew up with. So it is a journey of wisdom. It is a process of self-realizing that if we become the memories of what other people told us we are, we're trapped. So you ask an important question. What is this, as Carl Jung called it, individuating, how to know self? The answer is to explore new values with self and experience what it's like to live with those values rather than the values projected onto us as children.
So it really is
thank you. That was fantastic. Thanks, John.
So really it's an ongoing process, like a spiraling effect, because you might bounce back and forth from new values and realize that they weren't all what you thought they were going to be. And then you might go back to some of your parents' values because they did work for a certain amount of time.
Yes. The idea that we oscillate back and forth between the values we experience from our parents and how we identified ourselves through the compliance or defiance of those values versus realizing that I have my own values and own consciousness. And it takes time, at least the illusion of time, to witness the consequences, because what happens as we begin to disassociate from the values of our family, and then we go visit them for Turkey Day or Christmas or whatever, they see us as strange and weird, the black sheep of the family, and we feel ostracized. Mm-hmm. That's very painful.
Mm-hmm. And yet we still go through it.
We do. And one of the tools we use in our workshop is to help people change the periscope of how you see your mother and father, and learning to accept that they're adult children and that they raised you based on the values they were raised by and their family and their family. So to not carry the burden of attachment of values, we have to learn to accept sometimes harsh judgment by family members and realize that because we're not living the exact values they live, we're going to get criticized, ignored, punished, hurt. It's very painful.
John, so one of the things I wanted to ask was, what is it about the idea of you saying that you're seeing your parents as adult children?
You guys came loaded with great questions today.
We hadn't talked to you in a while, so you know.
Well, it could be that how we experience our parents actually changes even more than they change. What we see is their childish behavior isn't so much that they changed as we changed our perceptions of how we experience them, allowing, of course, for both to be true.
Mm.
So watching our parents age is pretty scary because all of a sudden it appears we're losing the mother and father of what I made them.
Mm.
And now I see them becoming less capable. I would actually offer the reason we grieve the illness or death of one or both of our parents is we're losing not who they were, but what we made them.
Mm.
And so it is a struggle of humans that have a significant attachment to what they need their parents to be versus who they are.
Mm. And can I add it? I think one of the parts of me that kind of gets very fearful is it's a window of seeing myself in the aspect of the body does decay. We do have some similarity that we're seeing a progression. We may not be like our parents totally in the way that they change, but we are seeing what happens to the dermal layer of our skin, and we're seeing the dysfunctions and stuff that, you know, as you said earlier, is a just, you know, destruction of the organs or destruction of whatever that's created.
I would offer the privilege of having mixed with what I perceive some wise folks around the world. And one of the things I find many of them agree with is if we could negotiate with our ego to realize the only source of wisdom is to surrender youth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so everything stays in balance. And the question that I ask myself is, do I want to still be able to run like I once did, compete and compare as I used to? Or do I want to become a wiser witness of noticing the messages of life I never noticed before? So one can't happen without the other, cause and effect. That's why we live in a dualistic world. And so to each of you, I would ask, do you want to hold on to a youthful body that remains insensitive or naive to the deeper expressions of life? Or are you willing to take on some wrinkles and some physical challenges in order to explore life a little deeper, slower, and more meaningful?
Mm.
If you can negotiate with your ego for this agreement, we greet aging with our heart, not a defended ego that needs to hide the process.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Drop the mic, all over, done.
Enough said.
That's awesome.
It is. I had a question within before that part, actually. I wanted to kind of go back to with family and aging and seeing your parents age and them kind of being children and because you're looking from a different perspective as you grow. They're really still the same, but you're seeing them differently. I wanted to bring family constellations into the mix a bit because the premise behind that healing modality is that the family members sometimes are in the wrong place, or there have been it's been the wrong order of energy flow, I guess, in that family hierarchy. Does that also, can you maybe expand on that a bit, John, and how that works and how that could play a part in possibly your relationship later in life with your parents, and how you're seeing them, and how, sometimes the energy could be unbalanced, possibly?
How long did you
That's
guys
a big
take to write
question, I
these
know.
questions out?
I didn't even write it. It just came from my head.
and your heart. I
And my
love
heart,
the
yes.
substance of the question. Well, first of all, defining family constellations suggests, not unlike our own constellation, how we orbit in around the gravitational or energy of other humans. And each of us, when we are incarnated, gestated, and birthed into planet Earth, the problem is that we all need a niche. We need to fit. And I either fit based on birth order or gender and how to get my emotional needs met. I either become compliant or defiant to family values. Both work. As to the constellation, to bring it to a bottom line, there is a word I'd like to use. It's called disorder. And at some point, the energy flows from our great-grandparents to great-grandparents to grandparents to parents to us to our children to their children, and on it goes. The correct order of energy flowing from the DNA of our legacy into us and onto our children means that we are here to support our children, that is, to parent our children until they learn to parent themselves. And that breakoff point is different for different people. Some people take on responsibility for their own experiences at a pretty early age. Others long past when they otherwise might. The disorder is when children try to parent their parents. When we assume, we lose respect when energy flows backwards. When we are so arrogant, we think we know more about how to live our life than our parents, and begin to parent them with our values rather than their values. When our parents get older, of course, they become more needy. Our job is to teach them the respect of, as they sink deeper into their neediness, they still have great wisdom, if not more wisdom, to offer. So we always want to make sure energy is flowing in the right direction. Today, we have raised a society in some families of entitlement. Who's going to get their Corvette first? Who's going to go to the bigger college? And on it goes. That money spent without earning, it creates an entitlement. And then we project that arrogance onto our family, and it creates a lot of chaos, as you may or may not know. Over 25% of the population still lives at home between the ages of 18 and 36. And that was the last numbers I saw. My hunches are higher than that now. And are they living at home with their parents in order to support the parents, or to support themselves supporting their parents? And how many parents live through their children, not with them?
Yeah.
How many children live through their parents? So the rite of passage for many kids happens somewhere between the ages of 11 and 15. If we haven't learned how to be responsible for our own performance by that age, then we blame other people. And as you called it, it's a disorder. Does that help?
It really does. That was great. Thank you.
So, John, how do people reach you? Like, where do they? I know you meet them where they're at, in the statements of how you see life and stuff. How do people reach you? And your website, on Instagram. Where do people connect with you?
Thank you. Yes, journeysofwisdom.com is accessing our website. They can contact me through my associate by calling area code 614-888-1240, 614-888-1240. They can, I do play around on Facebook on occasion, but principally, if somebody wanted to meet and greet, my purpose of invitation is to tell them they're the teacher, I'm the student. They bring the homework. My job is to fix people. My job is to teach people how to save themselves from themselves.
Mm. I always get chills when you say that.
Yeah. And if that's the case, John, then we've been your teacher for a while now. We didn't even mention that we have been following your work and going to your intensives for quite some time now, and so this is our connection to you for our audience, that we've known John for a while and have learned so much. I have actually enjoyed being a student as well in John's presence and learning so much about the school of life with John. So thank you, John.
And we'll also plug in your wife, Lee Randolph, is part of your team, and Bonnie, who will help with any questions if you have them. And you freely can contact them at the number he offers. If you want to go ahead, John, and tell them that number again.
614-888-1240.
We really appreciate you being on our show today.
Yeah, thank you.
As always.
Could I create a conscious challenge for the next time we talk, if there's a next time?
Sure.
Sure.
What if we talk about the unified field of energy, how to access the all?
Ooh.
That sounds great. Let's go ahead and schedule it. Let's book it.
What I love about both of you is your chuckles, your laughter, your willingness to look at the continuity of life and laugh with it, not at it. Thank you both.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
That's my hope too. Thank you both again for making this possible.
Yeah, you too.
Same
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.